In 2026, people who were actually in those rooms started talking, and what they're saying is rewriting the entire Sussex story from scratch. Not anonymous accounts, not tabloid speculation. People with real access who stayed quiet for years because silence was the more profitable option. That calculation just changed. And once you hear what they're saying, the fairy tale version of this story becomes very hard to believe. Before the palace, before Suits even made her famous, Meghan was moving through circles that most people never get near. Private yachts in Saint-Tropez, Ibiza, the Amalfi Coast, not as a tourist but as a regular face in environments where the guest lists are more exclusive than any red carpet. Photographs from those years show a woman who was completely at home in those spaces. Comfortable, confident, not someone who stumbled in by accident. Now in 2026, those photographs aren't just old holiday snaps anymore. They're being looked at again, very carefully, by people asking very specific questions about who she was meeting and what those connections actually meant further down the line. The term that keeps coming up is yacht girl. It's not a casual label. It describes a very specific dynamic that exists in elite circles, where beautiful, ambitious women are brought into these environments to elevate the atmosphere for the billionaires who own those boats. Everyone in the room understands the arrangement. Nobody discusses it outside the room. Meghan's team will tell you she was simply a successful woman living her life, enjoying her success. That framing is convenient. What it skips over is why certain women get invited into these spaces and others don't, and what is typically expected in return for that access. What makes 2026 different from the years of previous speculation is the specificity of what's being claimed. Not just that she was present at these events, but who she was meeting there, what relationships were being built, and, most significantly, which of those connections ended up overlapping directly with the British royal world years before she ever met Harry. And here's the detail that changes everything. In those Mediterranean summers, the circles she was moving through were overlapping with networks that the British royal family has spent years desperately trying to distance itself from. Same guest lists, same events, same world. Certain powerful people in Britain already knew who Meghan Markle was long before Harry sent that first Instagram message. Hold on to that, because it becomes the key to understanding everything that follows. Now here's where it gets really interesting. John Lefebvre, the man behind GS Elevator, the account that exposed the internal culture of Goldman Sachs from the inside, weighed in on the Sussex origin story in 2026, and he wasn't vague about it. The official version is what we all know. Harry and Meghan meeting on Instagram, sparks fly, fairy tale follows. Most people accepted that at face value because why wouldn't you? Lefebvre's version is completely different. He's claiming Harry wasn't the first royal she connected with through those channels, that her networking extended deep into the Middle East. Trips to France and Dubai, allegedly arranged by Saudi circles, by people who know exactly the kind of company they want around them and have the resources to source it precisely. His description of Harry was genuinely cutting. He called him the guy who tried to turn a global socialite into a housewife. That's not just a dig at their relationship dynamic. That's an accusation about the entire narrative. Because think about what it actually means if that framing is accurate. Meghan arriving in Harry's life wasn't her introduction to royalty and power and elite social circles. It was the closing chapter of something she'd been building for years before he ever appeared. She wasn't learning the rules in Kensington Palace. She already knew them. She had been operating inside those worlds, and specifically inside worlds adjacent to royalty, long before anyone in the British public had ever heard her name. And for Harry, who gave up his family, his country, his entire identity as a working royal, who said things about his own father and brother on camera that can never be unsaid, who went to war publicly against the institution he was born into. The idea that he wasn't the one doing the rescuing, but was actually the destination at the end of someone else's very long and very calculated strategy is genuinely devastating. He thought he was the hero of the story. The evidence coming out in 2026 suggests he might have been the closing scene of someone else's. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, go ahead and hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people. Now, just when you think the story can't get more complicated, Fergie shows up. Sarah Ferguson is someone people constantly underestimate, and that is always a mistake. She's survived more scandals than most royals have had birthdays, publicly humiliated, cut off financially, treated like a punchline by the institution she gave years of her life to. The toe-sucking photos, the cash for access scandal, the years of being sidelined while her own children attended events she wasn't welcome at. She lived through all of it and came back. Every time. Because here's what people consistently miss about Fergie. She was inside those royal social circles for decades. She was in the rooms when conversations happened that were never meant to leave those rooms. She watched everything. She knows exactly where everything is buried because she was standing right next to the people doing the burying. She stayed quiet for a long time, not because she had nothing to say, because staying quiet was the smarter position. In 2026, that calculation changed. She dropped a comment linking Meghan directly to Prince Andrew's social circles. Not vaguely. Not in a way that leaves room for it to be brushed off as a misunderstanding. Calling Meghan Prince Andrew's first client is not something you say by accident. Those words don't leave your mouth unless you have made a deliberate decision to put them there. The timing was surgical. The Sussexes had real momentum building. The Australia tour was coming. The narrative about them being the relevant future couple was gaining traction. And then Fergie put Meghan in the same sentence as Andrew, the most toxic name in the entire royal universe. The moral high ground the Sussexes had been standing on didn't shift. It collapsed overnight. But this isn't just Fergie being bitter, even though that rivalry between these two women is absolutely real and has been building for years. This is strategic protection. Every time Andrew's history comes back up, and it keeps coming back up, Sussex drama has conveniently provided a distraction, a new controversy, something to pull cameras away. Fergie has completely flipped that. She's now using the Sussex story as the distraction. She is protecting her family by making sure scrutiny moves around rather than landing in one place. And she knows things. That's the part that makes this so significant. She was inside those same social circles during those same years. She's the one with the receipts. And she's decided they're worth more to her now than her silence ever was. Now, the Epstein shadow. Nobody wants to say it directly, so let's just say it. It hangs over everything we're talking about here, and pretending it doesn't is not honest reporting. What Fergie's comment did was put Meghan and Andrew in the same social universe, same era, same kinds of private events, same networks of fixers who manage access and discretion for the ultra-wealthy. Were those guest lists overlapping? Were the same private venues involved? Were these two worlds, Andrew's social circuit and the Mediterranean elite circuit Meghan was moving through, actually connected in ways that go further than coincidence? Investigators in 2026 are looking at flight logs, dated photographs, and verified event records. These questions are being asked in serious places now, not just online. And this is where the mainstream explanation for the palace's original reaction to Meghan completely falls apart. The official story has always been snobbery. The cold institution rejecting an outsider, American, actress, woman of color. That narrative has been incredibly useful to the Sussexes, and they've built their entire brand around it. Every book, every interview, every documentary comes back to this central claim. The institution was cruel to us because of who we are. But the version circulating in 2026 is completely different. The palace didn't react badly to Meghan because of who she was. They reacted because of what she knew. Because someone in those corridors had information connecting her to circles the royal family had been desperately trying to distance themselves from for years. She wasn't a threat because of her background. She was a threat because of her access and her connections. And the hostility from day one wasn't cruelty. It was the palace being genuinely afraid of someone who might know where certain very inconvenient things were buried. Think about that for a second. Because if true, and that's still a significant if, it means the entire victim narrative is built on a foundation that is missing a very significant piece of context. The institution wasn't being cruel. It was being afraid. And there is a significant difference between those two things. Before we keep going, if you're not subscribed to Palace Insider yet, do it now. Drop a comment below with your take, because the conversation in the comments lately has been genuinely great. Now let's talk about Harry. Because Harry, in 2026, is a man who is seriously struggling. He spent years telling the world a specific story and believed it completely. He burned every bridge he had, family, country, role, relationships he'd had his whole life, all of it, to protect the version of events he'd been given. He was certain, completely, unwaveringly certain. And now that version is being dismantled in public, piece by people who were around before he was. People close to him say he's blindsided. This wasn't in any plan they made. He keeps asking who is doing this, who is placing these stories, who benefits from all of this surfacing right now at this exact moment when they're trying to build something new. The anger is real, but underneath it is a question he really doesn't want to sit with. Whether the woman he sacrificed everything for was fully honest with him about who she was and what she'd done before they met. Because if she knew those circles, if she'd been operating inside them for years, if the connection to Saudi networks and Mediterranean elite events was a real part of her history, then Harry wasn't discovering a woman who needed protecting from the world. He was meeting someone who already knew that world better than he did, someone who may have understood exactly what she was walking into when she appeared in his orbit, and exactly what she was walking away from when she left it. And that changes the entire emotional logic of every decision he made, every bridge he burned, every relationship he destroyed, every statement he made on camera. All of it was built on a foundation that, if these 2026 accounts are even partially accurate, was never the complete picture. The trap he's in now makes everything worse. Every time he responds publicly, every interview, every statement, he keeps the story alive for another week. Staying silent looks like confirmation. There is no good move. The people running this campaign knew that before they started. They built the whole thing around the fact that Harry cannot help himself when he feels attacked. It's the most predictable thing about him, and they are using it with precision. This wasn't random leaking. In London, information doesn't leak. It gets placed. There's a real difference between those two things. A leak is messy, uncontrolled, accidental. What we're seeing in 2026 is none of those things. The resurfacing of the GS elevator content, the timing of Fergie's comment, the specific framing around the Australia tour, none of that lands together by coincidence. This was tested first, whispered in dining rooms in Belgravia, shared with the right media figures to gauge how it would land, and when the reaction confirmed the public was ready, it was released. Deliberately, precisely, like people who have done this before. The gatekeepers are real, editors, fixers, old money courtiers who have been managing royal narratives for decades, people who move quietly between politics and media and money and never appear in headlines themselves. They don't use lawyers and press releases. They use information, the right information, placed with the right people, at the right moment. And right now, everything they have is aimed at the Sussexes. Every tool, every contact, every carefully placed story. What makes this operation so effective is that it doesn't need every detail to be proven true. It just needs to be specific enough and credible enough and timed well enough that it changes the atmosphere around the Sussexes wherever they go. Australia was supposed to be a fresh start on Commonwealth soil. Instead, the story was already there waiting for them when they arrived. You don't accidentally follow someone to the other side of the world. That's coordination. That is the royal machine doing exactly what it has always done, just with better technology and a much bigger target. Now let's talk about Australia, because the tour that was supposed to be the big comeback has turned into something else entirely. The Sussex team planned this for months. The venues, the optics, the photo opportunities, the whole narrative arc. Harry and Meghan welcomed back by cheering Commonwealth crowds, proving that their post-royal life has real meaning and real global relevance. This was meant to be the moment that reset everything. The image that finally pushed all of this behind them and replaced it with something warm, positive, forward-looking. Instead, the Yacht story arrived in Australia before they did. In Sydney and Melbourne, the atmosphere is not what the projections said it would be. Protests that used to be about republicanism and general royal fatigue are getting personal. Signs are appearing with specific references to the Yacht allegations and what people are calling the truth about 2011. The security team is dealing with things nobody planned for. The Australian public is direct and unsparing at the best of times. And right now, they're reacting to something very specific. The feeling that what's being presented to them is a performance rather than the truth. For two people whose entire brand is built on radical honesty, on having the courage to live your truth publicly, that is the single most damaging accusation possible. You can survive a lot of criticism. You can't easily survive being seen as a hypocrite by the audience that was supposed to be your biggest supporters. The most disturbing development of 2026, though, is something people are calling the genetic freak project, and this is genuinely unsettling to think about. According to reports coming out of elite tech circles, there are teams working on photorealistic digital reconstructions of those alleged Mediterranean scenes. Not low-quality fake photos that anyone can immediately spot. Cinematic-level rendering. AI technology that produces images even trained experts struggle to definitively call fake. The people behind this, if these reports are accurate, understand exactly how viral content spreads, which platforms carry it furthest, and they know the fundamental cruelty at the heart of misinformation. The original image reaches 10 million people. The correction that follows reaches 50,000. By the time the debunking goes mainstream, the original impression has already done its work. For Meghan, whose entire public identity has been built on the precise, careful management of her visual image, the idea of fabricated material placing her in those yacht environments flooding the internet is a complete nightmare. Because here's the brutal truth, it doesn't even matter if every single image is entirely fake. Once enough people have seen something enough times, the perception becomes the reality for a significant portion of the audience. Truth becomes almost secondary to what people are willing to believe. And in 2026, that threshold for believability is very low. Buckingham Palace, meanwhile, is sitting back and watching all of this with what can only be described as quiet patience. They are not intervening. They are not issuing statements. They are not defending anyone. And that silence is completely deliberate. They don't need to do anything because the machinery is running perfectly well without them. The gatekeepers place the story. The story is growing on its own. The Australia tour is absorbing damage it can't easily shake, and when the moment finally comes to formally put distance between the monarchy and the Sussexes, to make it officially, institutionally clear that the crown has absolutely no connection to whatever happens to these two people from here on out, they will be standing in the cleanest, most blameless position possible to do exactly that. That separation, when it comes, won't look like revenge. It won't look like the palace finally winning a long battle. It'll look like a reluctant, sad, unavoidable step by an institution that tried its best and simply ran out of road. And that framing, constructed carefully over years of doing absolutely nothing publicly while letting the machinery do its work, will be the final chapter in something that's been in motion for a very long time. The palace didn't need to do anything loudly, they just needed to wait, and they are extraordinarily good at waiting. Meghan is pivoting. The humanitarian angle is being pushed harder, the lifestyle brand repositioned, the personal narrative being stepped back from in a visible way. Classic move when the personal story gets too hot. Go global, wrap yourself in causes and charity and making a difference, things that are harder to attack directly and that reframe you as someone who exists beyond the gossip. It's a smart strategy and she executes it better than almost anyone. Whether it's enough this time is a different question. Because the people driving this 2026 campaign are not going to stop just because the target changed lanes. They built this to follow. Harry is restless, distant. The freedom he built in California doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like a different kind of constraint, one built out of distance and rumor and digital ghosts that keep finding him wherever he goes. The palace is still there. His family is still there. The whispers still reach him. They just travel further now. And the specific weight of not knowing whether the story he was told about his own marriage was ever the complete version. That's not something any house in Montecito can fix, no matter how far it is from London. He wanted out of the institution. He got out. And what he discovered is that the institution doesn't release people. It just makes the connection invisible until it decides to make it visible again. And right now, it has decided. The real question underneath all of this is simple. Was any of this ever actually about love? Or was it always, from the very beginning, about something else? Access, leverage, proximity to the kind of power that very few people ever get near. A very long game played by someone who understood the rules of elite circles far better than the person she chose to play it with? Harry gave up everything, literally everything, for a version of events that is now being seriously and specifically challenged by people who were actually there before he was. That is not a small thing at all. That is the kind of realization that changes how you see everything. Every memory, every decision, every sacrifice looked at through a completely different lens. Some stories end with answers. This one just keeps adding questions. And in the royal world, where silence is always the default and the truth always surfaces later than it should, that usually means the most important parts are still to come. We'll be here when they do, and this channel will have the full story before anyone else does. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, you are exactly who Palace Insider is made for. Drop a comment with your thoughts. We read every single one, and the conversation lately has been genuinely great. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next because this story is absolutely not over. And if this gave you something to think about, a like really does help us reach more people who want the full picture. See you in the next one.